iShook with our good friends in iShook Comics and our guest speaker, our guest that we want to interview, learn from him what he does, how he does it, and when he does it. Mr. Eric, I don't see your last name, Eric. I guess.
Esquivel.
Say it again.
Esquivel. Am I
Esquivel.
pronouncing that right? Am I doing good?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah, it's Esquivel. Yeah.
Okay.
Esquivel. He sounds like
Yeah,
a
the big
cartel
Moroccan
guy.
flag.
I don't know. All right, listen, guys. Here we have a great person here, Eric Esquivel, and he's very strong in what he does. We want to learn from him, educate ourselves. That's the whole point of all the podcasts I do, always. And Ben, do an introduction. First of all, how do you know Eric? What's going on? What's the deal here? Where are we at?
I network with so many people that are creators in comics, and he has been going at it for a while. He's did a whole lot of stuff. Most recently, the things that I see popping up are what he's did for Tidal Wave, and it covers a lot of different celebrities and everything. The Mike Tyson thing. These covers look amazing, by the way. The Mike Tyson thing's huge. It's one of them. I think just jump into that before like going on into like the Taylor Swift or whoever that he's did. Even though they mentioned him in a newspaper in South China for a quote about Taylor Swift and all that. So worldwide recognition there. Did you watch the Tyson fight, man? You studied out Tyson and all this stuff. Did you watch the fight?
I did. It was sad, man. Yeah, I spent months doing research for the book, and I was all ready to go. I had my Tyson T-shirt on. I was fired up, and then my girlfriend had to console me afterwards. It was pretty sad, but nothing can take away from the guy's. Right?
Yeah.
He's still gonna have his whole history behind him. So I'm happy he got paid, and I'm happy that I love that interview where he's talking about legacy, and he was like, "We're all dust, man. It doesn't matter. Who cares?" Like,
exactly. Just give me money so I can support my family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's it? Do you think the fight was rigged? I think it was rigged.
I don't. I think his knee was hurt. I think he's an old man.
Rigged. I think the knee brace was all an act to not lose his lose face. I think he was said, dude, you want your 22 million? Make sure you lose, right? Like he could have like.
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Well, you are driving, Eric.
Yeah.
That was a joke. It was a joke. Not to insult Eric. You there?
I'm sorry, guys. The connection. I think Logan Paul's hacking the connection.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't want us to expose it, right? No, but you don't think it was rigged? Honestly, you think it was rigged?
Yeah, it's very nice to be here. I appreciate it. Mr.
It's making Atari 2600 noises, y'all.
Love him.
No, he's here.
No, I think it's a weird thing, and I think that what Paul should do next, and I wrote it because he says anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere on Twitter. I said do a title fight because you've got people had said you need to fight a real boxer. I'm just going to talk while it's getting back with his signal. People had said you need to fight a real boxer, fight a real fighter, fight a real fighter, fight a real fighter. He goes ahead and he does that. Then people complain about that. He goes ahead and he gets like the legend Mike Tyson. I guess he's going to be back on. He goes ahead and he fights the legend Mike Tyson, gets him out there. So, that's a huge thing. I'm like, fight a title fight where the title is on the line, and then people can't say that.
Eric is back. Ben, stop. Eric is back. Eric, what do you think? Was it rigged or not? Honest opinion, bro.
Oh man. I think it was definitely like wrestling. The outcome was predetermined, right? I think.
Right. Exactly.
Trying to push the new guy by having him defeat the old legend, right? So
right.
I think, it's a way to kick someone's career off and make him seem kind of tougher than he is. And even if it wasn't rigged, I think it's like.
Do you know why I say it was rigged? Did you see the small the clip where Tyson is like about to really hit him? And then he's running. He's like, "Oh, don't hit me!" Like, what are you doing? That wasn't part of the plan, right? And you could tell that Tyson was holding back, biting on his glove. 97 punches for a guy? No. That's a joke. I think it was he could have hit a lot more punches than 97. And Jake Paul was 300 or something, right? It was a joke.
And never in his career do we see him not have that killer instinct. Like he doesn't pause. Like what is happening?
Yeah, what's going on? Like, I gotta buy. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Like what the heck is going on there? Even at his age and all the training that they showed on Netflix, his training was up to par. Even if he had a knee brace, that's ridiculous. Look, he survived 10 rounds with a knee brace. He could have knocked him out easily. What does the knee brace have to do with knocking the guy out?
I agree. But we sound like election denialists. We're like, no, man, no.
You know what's real? Well, two things have got more talk than the Tyson thing, and one was the good-looking ring girl that goes to the University of Alabama, but the other was that Puerto Rican woman that got headbutted 4 times by the Irish lady, even though you use like lady loosely because she's headbutting her 4 times. I mean, that was just plumb dirty. I couldn't understand a word she said. She sounded like a human bagpipe. What did you think of that fight?
Yeah, their fight was more exciting to me. The gals really were the excitement of the night. The boys were sort of like dancing around each other. But yeah, it was interesting to be introduced to those 2 new fighters as well. I think it was great for everybody's career. Everybody made money, and now they're all household names, and that's cool.
Yeah, I think Tyson deserved the money. I think he deserved it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I think he deserved the money after what Don King did to him, right? Like, come on. Like he got to get back on his feet.
Yeah, he's had a hard life, and it's cool that he's able to kind of relax now and do his different like financial endeavors that aren't tied to getting punched in the face. That's cool.
So tell us, what do you do in the comic industry? Like, what's your main role in Tidal? What is it called again? Tidal. You gotta teach me. I'm
Tidal
a new
Wave.
guy. Tidal Wave. Okay.
Yeah, so I've been working in comics for I think about a little over 20 years. Like since I was a kid, when I was 16, I started off doing like shitty little Kinko's self-published comics, like little black and white pen and ink things, and moved up to doing licensed books. Every kind of 5 years, I'm like a different guy in the industry. So first I was like licensed guy, where I would do like Adventure Time and Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man and that kind of stuff. And then from there, I got into doing like superhero stuff. So I wrote like a Superman Christmas story for DC Comics, and a Flash helping Puerto Rico after the hurricane story, and some of that stuff. And then I was like Mr. Vertigo horror guy for a minute. And then for the last few years, I've been writing about 1 book a week for Tidal Wave, which is really, really fun. They don't come out at that clip, like they come out a little bit after, like a little later, but I write about 1 book a week for Tidal Wave Comics, and they do biography comics. So the reason that's cool to me is because the comic industry and the fan base of comics sort of got a little bit crummy for a while. So I think it's important to grow it with new people and to get kids to read, and especially like people that are reluctant readers, like kind of like I was when I was a kid. I wasn't super into like reading the classics, but I would read any comic you put in front of me. So what Tidal Wave does is they create books based on people like Taylor Swift or Mike Tyson or BTS, and they create those books and get a lot of new readers, folks who never read a comic before in their life, and they bring them into this world, and it's sort of like a gateway drug. And I'm really happy to do that. It's a lot of fun.
Not bad. Now, what's BTS referring to?
It's a K-pop band. It's like the Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, K-pop. All right. So basically, they're getting into what's trending in order to get people into the comic industry.
Yeah, because most people don't go to comic stores, right? Most people shop at Amazon or at Walmart or at Target or at bookstore, and that's where these people, that's where these books are sold. And also, like, it was mentioned earlier that I was like mentioned in a Chinese newspaper and that kind of thing, and like we get a lot of press. I was in Billboard magazine and Rolling Stone and a lot of actual media. The comic book journalist scene is like for people who just want to make comics. Like every editor I had at DC was an ex-comic journalist who just like wanted their reviews were just pitches to work in the industry. Like there's no such thing as comics journalism, but there is real journalism, right? So we can get out in that. And so that's been a lot of fun interacting with like actual real people and not just comic dorks or aspiring comic people. That's been really fun, even though that's what I am. But yeah, engaging with the real world, which there's a much larger audience there, and it's a lot more fun for me. And then I can kind of dip my toe back and forth. Like, you know, I still this year wrote like a Zorro short story. That wasn't in comics, but I still engage with like superheroes and fandom. But I mostly do stuff for like pop culture, like the wider pop culture.
Wow, that's not bad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you do anything on the side? You do any freelancing at the end, or?
Yeah. So I work for a bunch of different companies. Mostly I've been doing prose stuff on the side. So, did you guys ever read the Destroyer novels, the things that the Punisher is based on?
No, I did not.
There's over 160 of them. They were like men's adventure novels. It was like just it was what the Punisher was sort of like a joke about. It was like this guy called the Destroyer. So I got to write for that recently. My uncle used to love that, so I got to write that. And I got to write Zorro recently, and that was both for a company called Bold Venture Press. I read a lot of horror short stories for these companies all over the place. Like Airship 27, and yeah, I do a lot of work, so I bounce all over the place. Even my tidal wave stuff is freelance. I just like tend to work with them the most fun.
Wow. But Riley, you got a question for Eric?
Yeah, and how is your experience doing these comics with those celebrities, and if you think it's worth it to get those fans to the comic world?
That's a really good question. Yeah, some of the celebrities are super into it and some of them aren't, and that's always been the fun thing. The people recently, like, the books have been doing really well, so now people want to get into it in an official capacity. So like recently, do you guys know the artist Greg Horn? He works for Marvel a lot on like Avengers and X-Men. He did yeah, he's cool. He did the covers for a Mel Gibson comic and also for the Catwoman, or for Halle Berry, and both those people wanted to get those comics at their tables for conventions. They don't have much to sign. They signed autographs of other people's stuff, but they wanted a thing to sell. So Halle Berry, I made a comic for her, and she signed a bunch. And they did some graded ones, some different variant covers, and then I did a comic for Mel Gibson that he can sign at conventions. And then I'm doing one for Hayden Christensen, Darth Vader from Star Wars.
Wow. Oh, we just lost him.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
But that's lots of cool stuff. No,
yeah, he had to pay the Uber. Yeah, it was a joke.
On his Taylor Swift, they have a cover where she looks like Dazzler from Marvel, and there had been talk about maybe her playing Dazzler in a Marvel movie. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but they said that she would be a good candidate to play Dazzler. I don't know if you're familiar with that character or not, Benny.
No, I'm not.
She's on the X-Men for a little bit.
I remember Kiss comics.
Oh, Eric is back. He's back. It's all good. It's all good. It's part of the fun of going live, right? It's like
Eric, are you a Swiftie? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, who isn't a Swiftie, right? Taylor Swift, her company actually requested a copy of the book, and they read it, and they were like, "We were thinking about suing you, but this is really good, great. So we're not gonna, like, Godspeed. It's not official. We're not gonna endorse it, but we're not gonna sue you either." So it's cool to know that her and her people actually read it and asked for a copy, and that was really fun.
That's it. So how do you? Okay, so that's a good point. How do you do the licensing of all these comics with these celebrities?
I think that was the highest selling book for them so far, is the Taylor Swift book. People really like that one. There are tons of variant covers, and when people usually talk to me, they're like, "Oh, you're the Taylor Swift guy," and like, there's worse things to be, I guess. So I've been called worse.
So she didn't mind that you made money off the comic?
She didn't mind what? I'm sorry.
Like, she didn't mind that you made money off this comic, or did you have to pay royalties even though they didn't agree with it?
She didn't mind, and most people don't, because it's like journalism. You know, you're allowed to write biographies, and you're allowed to write about people. You can't have like the adventures of Taylor Swift fighting Batman. You can't like do fictional stuff all the time. But you know, it's the legal status of these books is that you're allowed to write about people, and the reason they're cool as a fan is because no one's telling me what to do. Like, I write negative things sometimes, or I'll write just like brutally honest things, and that's up to me to do, because it's not an official book, right? So they can come in afterwards and they can be like, "Oh, cool, I liked this. I'll sign it. This is fun." But I would never want to work. I've done a few times. I've worked with people like officially giving me notes, and that just becomes propaganda at that point, right? Nobody wants to write that. Nobody wants to read that. As a fan, who cares? You want to read like the real nitty gritty.
Right. Makes sense. Ben, any questions? What do you think? I mean, I'm loving Eric, what he's doing. It's unbelievable. Like, I learned a bunch of stuff from him right now. Go ahead.
So he talked about Vertigo horror doing that, and I think that the cool thing about that is Vertigo, it had went away, but it's come back. That's a really recent development, that Vertigo's back on the map. How was working with Vertigo?
I worked at the weird version of Vertigo, where it was like the woke Vertigo, right? It was like they wanted to push people's buttons, and they wanted to hire people who were controversial. So they hired like Zoe Quinn, who was the Gamergate, and then they hired like me. When they asked for the books, they were like, "I want a perspective, and I want it to be sort of like punk rock rebel about how like rough it is to be Latino in America," which is funny to me as like a white passing person who like barely speaks Spanish. They're like, "That's the guy. You're the most Mexican guy I ever met in my life." Brian Hill, who wrote Fork too, the book they asked for him was like, you're a black guy, I want you to write about being a black guy with a slightly negative spin. Like all they wanted it was like very much like they wanted to get the internet's attention and they wanted to engage that kind of thing. And God knows why. And the editor was fired afterwards. And they sunsetted Vertigo for a minute. They like canceled the brand and made a black label for a while until it came back. And like, it was kind of fun to do. But then the audience that you get is people that are like either really pro the book before reading it because they're politics, or they're really negative against the book before even reading it. So it was a weird experience. Like I had a lot of fans that liked it, but I couldn't tell if they were genuine because it was people. And that's not as fun as like writing about like cowboys and vampires and astronauts and Taylor Swift. Like I got into comics to have fun,
Oh yeah, absolutely. That gets you into the YouTube infamy with the people that want to build their platform on a hill of discontentment. There's too much of that. Yeah. But
how hard is it to meet deadlines? I mean, I know deadlines are probably a huge issue when it comes to comics, right? Like, how hard is it for you to get deadlines done or to reach those deadlines? And is there any leeway of deadlines, so to speak?
Yeah, there's no leeway. As a writer, you're the first person, right? If you don't get your job done, then like the penciler doesn't get to eat, the inker doesn't get to eat, the letterer doesn't get to ink, the color doesn't get to eat. Like everybody relies on you, right? So as the writer, you can't mess up and you can't be late because it affects the whole crew. So yeah, I write about 7 pages a day, and that not always on the same project, but if you do like if a page takes an hour to write, then that's like less than an 8-hour day, and most people work 8 hours a day, right? So like that's how I look at it. Is that's the bare minimum I can do is like what someone else does at their like minimum wage job, working for sit in a chair and type. Like that's an easy job to have. I have people in my family who like pick berries for a living. Wow. So so I do like 7 or 8 pages a day. And with comics too, it's way easier than prose because the artist is doing most of the work, right? So we're really spoiled as comic book scripters. So that's the pace at which I write. It's about 7 pages a day.
How many hours does it take you to do the 7 pages? Obviously, a regular person will take 7 hours. I don't think it takes you 7 hours.
Yeah. Usually like it'll even out because one page will take 2 hours, one page will take 30 minutes, but usually it's about it's like a 7-hour day, 7 or 8 hours.
So you're writing 7 hours a day, 7 pages a day.
Yeah. I'll break it up. Like I'll do the first of 3 hours, and then I'll go like throw a kettlebell around, or I'll read something, or I'll go.
Yeah, so it's not. You're not spoiled. I mean, you're spending
Benny,
7 hours.
Conceive what to write. You gotta conceive what to write. You're not just writing something fast.
No, that I get it, but no. But I just want to know that like people watching this need to know the importance of a writer in a comic. Like without the writer in the comic, you don't have a comic. That's just bottom line.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, like without writers, you don't have movies either. I mean, AI will not be able to conceive new ideas. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll spend some of that time will be like outlining. Like I said, like usually the beginning of the week, like Monday and Tuesday will be the days when I'll outline, and the outline has like what happens on every page, so I know what the story's going to be. I know what the act breaks are. Usually I pitch it to an editor ahead of time, so they approved of the broad story, and then I take that broad story and I break it down into what happens in each page, and then throughout the week I can just do that. So I kind of know every day.
You take it from a macro sense, then you micro it, and then you detail the full comic, probably, right? That's what you do.
Yeah. The editor says yes or no to like the big picture. Break that down into pages, and then I know every day which pages I'm going to do that day. Like usually I know like, oh well, my Monday morning is going to be like Taylor Swift age 1 to age 13. Like it's goofy. It's like that kind of thing.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, and the writing is the soul of the comic.
I saw Raul light up when you talked about how hard the artist works on the comics. That's his thing. He's a penciler. He does all kinds of stuff. He can do it all, really. I mean, this man, he can drop one side and down the other.
Yeah, you're all that matters, man. Like the artists have such a harder job. Like when I see comic book writers complaining about how hard it is to break in, I always laugh at them because like, of course it is. Like everybody has an idea for a comic, and also like the writing that you're doing, you're like 90% of the words that you write on the page, no one's ever going to see. They're just directions to an artist, so they better be good, right? Like it drives me crazy when writers for comics have egos because nobody cares. Genuinely, it's so funny.
Right.
And if you can't write in any other medium and you're just writing in comics, like that's really goofy. Like if I only saw the name Blankenship on comics, I would think less of you, but I know that you do a lot of pro stuff and you've done
Oh, a
reviews
lot.
and like,
Yeah.
I've seen your work without an artist to hide behind, so I know you have what it takes. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of guys that they're too scared and they just want to put an artist in front of you because if it's good, then they can take credit for it, and if it's bad, they can be like, that was Raul, man. I don't know what he's thinking.
Novels, novellas, all that. The rough thing was when I wrote a church play because people butchered their lines. They left it. It made me nuts. Non-actors acting.
Yeah. I wrote a luchador play for the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and I wrote about like a grandpa kind of like facing death, and death was in the form of a wrestler. And in my mind, you can do that because like in comics you can do anything, but in reality, an old man had to wrestle somebody and he blew his knee out. And it doesn't occur to me that in comics there's no budget. Actors can do whatever you want them to do. There's no reality. But for plays, yeah, you got the reality of those churchgoers giving your dialogue, and you're like, oh God, it should have been 2 pages shorter, right?
Let me ask you, in your experience, has comics grown more or less? Because I remember when I was a kid, bro, like X-Men comics and the cards were big in the 90s. Like, I don't know, are they still big? I mean, I'm not affiliated with that as much anymore, right? But are they still big, or is the growth higher than the 90s with digital, with e-publishing?
I mean, people read in general a lot less, I feel like, and you can see comic stores dying at a rapid clip. I think like people like the ideas behind comics, which is why you're seeing them translated into medium. Like you're seeing, that's why people pretend writers are important, right? Because you can translate a writer's story to a TV or a movie, but the artist kind of gets screwed on that. But yeah, I think people aren't really reading comics as much because they're also about themselves, right? Like most comics, they're in a continuity that is like 70 years old or over 100 years old, and they're about other comics from 40 years ago. They're not about things that are relevant to daily life, and if they are, then they're like super saccharine and cheesy. Like that's why these celebrity comics, like people will actually give a shit and they'll jump in and they'll try it because like, oh, I like Taylor Swift, I like Stone Cold Steve Austin, I'll read about that, but they don't want chapter 9,000 of Gambit because they don't really know where in the life they are.
Who's Gambit, right?
I think comics are like we can reach outside the normal comic people and get new folks.
I got it, but the question is I don't think that's more in the U.S. It's probably that way, but I think overseas it's very heavy.
You're talking about manga or comics, because that's two different things.
I think graphic novels and manga more than comics. The 20-pager, 24-pager, people don't want a 24-pager comic and read it. I think it's more the graphic novels, the manga, 40, 50 pages plus is what people are really looking at.
And now we have small groups consuming this. When we were kids, it was very diverse.
Right.
Now it's more concentrated.
Right. Eric, you there? Came back on.
It's froze. It'll clear up here. It'll clear up here in a minute and all that. He's a smart man to take an Uber in LA. I drove in LA before. It is rough. Yeah. I got flipped off more times than ever in my life. I just tried to take it positive and say everybody's telling me that I was number one.
I think Eric is talking, but we can't hear him.
Yeah.
It's starting to get there. Eric, tell us when you're with us. Okay, it's working on it. You know, there's a lot of people today that I think that they do get pulled somewhat into the comics, like The Boys or The Walking Dead, because they've reached the medium of media, and you know, and they catch them because it's an Amazon series or because it's a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
No doubt, but I think comics do have I saw in statistic reports in France, comics are really big in purchases.
They are.
In Japan also. Japan, the graphic novels are very big. Manga is just another form of a graphic novel.
Yeah, and
France and Belgium have a big thing with comics.
We can see a lot of people buying comics during the artistiales, and they still buy.
Right, that's true. They do buy.
So when you look around the world, because I have for comic book stores and everything, You can if you didn't know that there were big cities there, they always tend to like gravitate towards cities. So just say here where I live, and I'm in East Tennessee. If you were to look at a map and look up comic book shops, there might be one over here and one over there and one over there, but then you'll have like 5 or 7 or 10 in Knoxville. And then you'll have a bunch that are around Chattanooga, and then you'll have a bunch that are in Nashville, because those are the big cities. There's one in Johnson City. Unfortunately, today I found out that one a few weeks ago in Clinton, Tennessee, had closed down. Whatever the issues were with that, it hurt. It breaks my heart, man. I talked to the guy
I'll tell you,
at
but
Comics
honestly, I think
Exchange
the
about
problem
that.
is, I think the problems with the comic books are very simple. It's like last week. Remember, I said that Barnes and Nobles has a revival, and the revival in Barnes and Nobles is huge. They're doing 66 stores nationally, rebuilding, reestablishing,
Yeah.
but they're making Barnes and Nobles more of an experience. Not just I'm going to buy books. They're going to have book readings. They're doing a very different, style of Barnes. Because think about it, Barnes and Nobles is in a decline, but when you go to all the airports, do you know how many bookstores are in the airports worldwide? Like the bookstores in airports, they're not going bankrupt. They just went, well, one did, but they were bought out. But they're very successful. And listen, when I go to the plane, I read a book. I buy National Geographic always. I buy a History Channel book. They should actually put comics in airports, my opinion.
So we were talking about kind of days gone by, because he had mentioned how he was in Vertigo in the state that was in, and then it went away for a while and it's come back. So in the 90s, and so I was a teenager in the 90s, to give some. I was born in 81. So in the 90s, when Spawn and everything came out, comics were edgy and all, but they were also in Target. I didn't know Walmart then. They were in Myers. That's a store that's like up north. All that. You would go in there and there would be like a bunch of comic books that you could buy. You could buy Sabretooth. I remember seeing it in Myers, so there's groceries, there's clothes. It's like a super Walmart, and all that type of thing. That's a whole different playing field. I was in Walmart yesterday in one of them, and I was back by the book area because I thought, let me check it out and see what's going on. And they did have a Deadpool manga. It was like Deadpool Samurai, or something like that. And again, that's another animal. Them. They're what, right to left reading. The pages are that way. They're reversed from other books. And it's black and white and what have you inside. So it's got the whole like manga form, and there's size just to a certain size. But yeah, that was back there, and because it's manga and because it's Deadpool, who didn't used to be that popular of a character, the movies have made him popular. He also was in like several cartoons and what have you.
Deadpool was not popular. Deadpool was not so popular as a character. I think Spawn was very popular, and then he just disappeared by the powers to be. There was a Spawn movie. I think the Spawn movie killed Spawn.
You're okay.
Very promising, and then
I know Spawn. Okay, so anyway, the thing with Spawn, they're working on King Spawn right now. Todd McFarlane Toys has never went down. It's always been a thing, but yes, it did feel more popular when it just came out when I was a kid. They had the HBO cartoon series. They had a movie that I thought was they've got Gunslinger Spawn, who's from the Old West. He's the weakest Spawn, but he comes into modern times. They've got King Spawn, and then they've got Spawn. I'm not an authority on every single book, but Spawn stuff's alive and well, but it's not up there like Batman or any of those things.
Yeah.
It would take a lot, but it's like the granddaddy of Image Comics. It's the biggest comic that Image has ever had. They've of course had like the Max and Savage Dragon and whatnot, but yes, Spawn is Image's big deal. It's its baby and everything.
Now McFarlane is more toys.
He had a brilliant vision. He really did. Todd McFarlane, and there was a lot of unfortunate stuff that went on at Marvel Comics, but they made a fortune off of his stuff, and they were going in there because of certain artists, and he sold like over 1 million, like Spider-Man. And he said, I didn't even get a plaque. My dad worked in a factory, didn't get a plaque, didn't get a bonus. And he felt like he was taken for granted. And he hauled a bunch of people out of there, went down to DC, did the same thing, and they started Image Comics. And the thing about them is that all of their names equated to cells, every single one of those people. And so Image blew up. But this was also the 1990s when you could get comics and media play and whatever. So I mean, it was a different era, and again, they were at the absolute top of their game when that happened. So it was different. It was weird.
So we have a new guest, Mr. Bobby Nash.
Bobby, Eric was just here, and he's got like an Uber going around LA, and he just popped out. So your timing is impeccable. Now, Bobby has written prose. He writes comics, all kinds of things. He does a lot of like secret agency noir type stuff going on.
I kill a lot of people. I like killing people.
Do you know who else I'm under the impression kills a lot of people? Because I saw the trailer for it, Spider-Man Noir, that movie, or it's a series coming out on Amazon. Do you know anything about him? Have you ever checked him out? I was researching him today.
I read one of my brother had one of the first trades, and I read it. I'm also very excited. I don't have one close, but the guy who drew the first Spider-Man Noir, Dennis Calero, did the covers for the first Snow books that I wrote, which is
awesome.
Yes.
Wow.
But
Bobby, before you continue, Bobby, just a quick commercial. Do not forget to sponsor our fundraise for Super Black here on Indiegogo. QR code right here, guys. We'll drop the link in our YouTube. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bobby.
It's okay. Well, I apologize for being late. I need a manager, really, because I booked 2 things at one time. So I just left a library event where I was doing something like this to a room full of kids sitting in the library.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty cool. And so we talked about writing comics, and so that was fun. So thank you guys.
I'm glad, by the way, Bobby's saying that, because I said that Barnes & Nobles is opening 66 new locations. I don't know why I'm promoting Barnes & Nobles, but I think they're trying to make Barnes & Nobles more of like a library experience where you have book signings and so on and so forth. I think that's where the whole revolution and the revival of Barnes & Nobles is coming out. Side point?
I've noticed in the last few years, especially since the quarantine of a few years ago, more stuff like this, video podcasts, video panels have happened. But now that once that was over, and those are still going on, but I've noticed more places that used to shun signings and things like that. Like libraries, it used to be really hard to get libraries to invite people in.
And now they're doing it.
And now they're doing, not only are they doing like, hey, come meet this author, we're going to do a whole convention. And so you go in and there's 20, 30 writers selling books, doing panels, just like a regular convention. And so I think in terms of Barnes & Noble, I think they're seeing that and going, hey, we're missing out on an opportunity to bring people into stores. And so, and there's a lot of them, but like it used to be that there was a indie author day at the library, but every library did it the same day.
It's ridiculous. Why?
And so I think they realized exactly it's ridiculous. So now it's split up all throughout the year. So I'm in at least one library a month talking to different groups. And because of things like StreamYard and Zoom and things like that,
right,
I am doing events at libraries in California, Ohio, and it's great. It's a wonderful opportunity to get out there. And I'm glad that those places where books live.
Oh, by the way, I'm excited that you're saying that, because I think that's what we need in the country, a revival of kids and young adults reading again. I'm like, you cannot learn out of text messages on your phone. It's ridiculous. And
I get invited a lot because of the comics connection. I write in comics. And so I have like a presentation that I can do with images and all of how a comic is put together, where I can show them all. Like I was at middle school last week doing it, where it's all the steps from here's how you pitch to write to draw to blah blah blah, but it's visual, so they can see it. They can see how the words that I put here turn into this. And so it's and I know BL writes comics. You guys also write as well, or?
No. We have a comic that I got Ben to work with. It's called Super Black, with a Q. And Ben is the writer for my comic, and Rael runs iShook. He's the head of iShook Comics, so he's the final word of the artistic. So
you guys know what I'm saying. Yeah, you see how because as a writer, one of the coolest things for me is seeing the artwork come in. Because
yeah.
in my head, when I wrote it, I have an idea of what it's going to look like, but it never looks like that. But it's almost like it's our version of the excitement of when you buy the comic and open it up
Yes.
for the first time. We're seeing that artwork come in and seeing it start to come to life.
Oh
And
yeah,
as
I love it. I love it
Well,
just
yeah.
like you. I'm in awe when it comes. Like, wow, it was more than I expected. If it goes more than I expected, I'm like, that's it. It's
Yeah.
awesome, right? Like we've accomplished, right? But how
Bobby,
did, but
Bobby,
right.
what thrills my heart, just like you said, like this comic Super Black that was worked on, and there have been a few other instances when you have something pictured in your head and it comes out better, and it's like
Mhm.
I didn't think of it like that. They actually improved what I was doing.
Oh yeah, they've added. There's a detail there that just a background detail that I hadn't thought of. But man, that's great. Or something you can touch on later. Or this is going to sound weird from writers, but sometimes the artist will draw it in a way you're like, you know what, I can lose this dialogue because
Right.
the art is making that point. I
Right.
don't need to say it, which is weird because we love our words, but at the end of the day, with comics, it's that teamwork. You're part of a team, and the writer brings something, the artist brings something, the colorist brings something, the letterer. Everybody's bringing something that makes this one thing that we couldn't all do on our own.
Scotty
I
Young
love that.
Scotty Young recently, he did this series, Ain't No Grave. And of course, I love
Mhm.
that because I love Westerns anyway. And like the book before last has virtually no words in it. This woman's going through like the afterlife trying to face off against death so she can get back to her kid and her husband. And there's almost no words. It's
Mhm.
just like picture, 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 which makes it a super fast read. And then at the end of it, there's like a line or two, and that's it. And it was really good.
Oh yeah, I remember years ago, Marvel did 1 month where none of the books had words. Some worked better than others, but there were some really interesting storytelling choices of what kind of story you can tell. I've done a few things with very few words. I have one that's in production now where it starts out just like a regular comic. People are talking. The main character, it's a sci-fi thing. The main character gets his ears get damaged, and at the
Wow.
moment his ears are damaged, like the eardrum bursts. There are no more words because he can't hear them. We can't hear them.
Wow.
And then it becomes a different. You write that a little differently because now it's more okay. We've got to show this part because that's important. And so the artist and writer start focusing more together on how we're going to lay this out because we still have to tell the story, and it becomes a wonderful creative challenge, which can be a
Okay.
lot of fun.
Okay. That what you said makes me think of the movie The Artist. Have you ever seen that movie? It's a silent film. Dan Aykroyd or whatever his name is, he's in it. The main actor, the man and the woman, they're both French, so people wouldn't like recognize them, and they make it look like an old movie. And they started out, and he's being tortured, and the bad guys are saying, and it clicks over to like the screen with the writing like silent movies do. They're like, speak. And he's like shaking his head no, because the whole thing is about when the talkies came in and how it messed with stuff. There's a lot of tap dancing in it. I like it. The Jack Russell Terrier is fantastic, but continue.
So it's called The Artist.
Yeah, it's
I'll have to look that one
I
up.
love it. It's in black and white. I like black and white movies, and my wife's like, "Is this in black and white?" So I'm going to be all about Spider-Man Noir. I love Peter Lorre stuff. I watched The Eyes Without a Face recently, and it was great. It's a French film. It's black and white. It's not silent, but I don't speak French, so I have to like read what's saying. But it's really cool. This guy's getting these women and cutting off their face and stitching it on his daughters. He's a doctor, and he also catches dogs. The dogs kill him at the end. It's great. The German Shepherd does the best.
Yeah, now is Nicolas Cage playing Spider-Man
Yes,
Noir?
yeah, and he
Because I
did the
know
voice in other.
because he voiced him in the cartoon. Yeah, so I was curious about that because yeah.
Watch the
So okay,
trailer
so
on YouTube. It's amazing.
they're making a movie, Spider-Man Noir.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's a series on Amazon Prime.
Okay, series. Okay.
Yes, and the it looks awesome. It
Let's
looks
say,
like
so
Sin City or
how did
something.
Amazon get the rights to a Marvel project?
Well, they probably they would have got that from Sony.
Okay, so yeah, Sony has
If it's a
rights
Spider-Man
to
property,
Superman.
yeah,
To
they have
Spider-Man,
all
to
the
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man rights. Yeah. So, like, because Marvel had to make a deal to get Spider-Man in the Marvel movies. That's why you haven't seen the Spidey villains in the Marvel movies, because Sony still has that license.
Yeah, because
And
they
so
made
Spider-Man
Craven
Noir,
and all that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
they did Craven, and they did the what's the vampire's name?
Oh, Morbius.
Yeah, they
Yes.
did a few.
And
Carnage.
I've not loved a lot of the Sony stuff. Some have been good. I haven't seen Madam Web.
I've not either.
I heard like nobody I knew who saw it said anything good about it. So I'm like, I'm good.
I've not heard anything. They have certain women in it that people would watch it just because they think they're hot.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can watch their other movies that are much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I like the concept of Spider-Man Noir. I think a series might work better than a movie for that.
I think the series are doing better than the actual
Yeah.
movies with what I'm seeing, like the results.
Mhm.
Not every series, but I think majority of the series, that are coming out of Marvel are performing better. I mean, the
Yeah.
stats just show their performance much better.
Even DC. I mean,
Yeah, well,
the Penguin.
DC conquered the series. That's why
Yeah.
Marvel's coming in with the series. So the DCs were doing their series while Marvel was doing the MCU right movies. And then they saw the success with the series more than the movies, because the movie comes out once, it's over.
Yeah.
You have the series, it's constant, so you have constant review and fan base on a series.
I think you can also tell a different type of story with a series. Like you mentioned the Penguin. The Penguin, if we'd have condensed that into a 2-hour movie, would not have been as good as an 8-episode television series. Because we would have lost all the nuance. We would have lost all the character moments in favor of the action. And I think not every story needs to be a movie. Like, I'm a huge Fantastic Four fan, and I would have much preferred to see the Fantastic Four as a series than a movie.
Yeah,
because I think they would work better as a series. That's just me. But yeah, like WandaVision would not have probably worked as well as a movie. I think it would have confused a lot of people. And
you would not have enough time to get to those intricate points of the process of the introducing what was happening in the back end, the background of what's happening. How did they get to this? You needed like 10 episodes for that to be shown. I mean, but I think but Joker was successful. And as a movie.
Yeah, but like I said, and it worked there because they were focused on this thing.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not saying not all of them can't not, like some of the movies are great and some things work better for movies. If you're going to do, you're going to do Spider-Man, I think works better as a movie because there's big action sequences and seeing Spider-Man swing through the city, that needs to be on a big screen. You need that spectacle.
Right. Plus Spider-Man.
Now Noir Spider-Man doesn't really, he's got the powers essentially, and the webbing's organic, but he doesn't do like the most of the Spider-Man. He just kind of runs and kicks off walls and runs around a lot. So he handles himself in a different way. And he has a pistol and doesn't care to shoot somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and I think you can just, for certain characters, people don't know them. As a comic fan, I'm like, oh my God, Wanda and Vision are getting a show. People who have never heard of Scarlet Witch and the Vision are like, who?
Right.
And so you're having to explain, now.
Right. So basically you're reintroducing the characters to society. People are forgetting, like I always tell people, okay, we did a podcast, right? We had, let's say, X amount of watchers live, right? Live is always hard. But to me, it's like everyone can watch our podcast later. Just because don't expect that just because you did a podcast, that's it. Everybody saw it. No, some see it, but there's millions of more that can see what you said tomorrow. So that's the beauty of podcasting. So what's happening?
Know that people still rave about Daredevil. As I was gonna say about that, they say that was like the greatest superhero series that there was.
It was.
My wife said, "Is this what Daredevil's like? Not like the movie?" I'm like, "The movie was garbage."
Well, that's a great example because you've got a movie and a TV show to compare.
Right.
and they were able to get more into the character of Daredevil in a season of the show, whereas in the movie they only touch on little bits
Yeah.
because
Only
it's more.
Well, 3 seasons even, and
Yeah,
Kingpin was amazing.
yeah. But
Yeah.
they were able to build on that because in the Daredevil movie, Kingpin's the bad guy. Great, he does this, they fight, it's over. In the
Yeah.
show, we're able to see him grow and become this
Right.
villain.
Wasn't that beautiful with the painting in the wall? Didn't you love that where he's staring at that and the because he's looking at it at the place at first and you don't get it and they spell it out slowly over the episodes. It's all these white specks and then he remembers after he killed his dad, he stares at a wall that looked like that, and then when he's in prison,
I think we
he
want to
sits
give
down and he
spoilers.
stares at the wall. Dude, it's been out for so long.
I know.
It's
Maybe some people didn't see it. Come
but
on.
it's get with the program, man. I mean,
Right.
it's been out
Well,
that long.
it's probably going to get new viewers now that we're getting new Daredevil. I
Oh,
suspect.
yeah,
the
born
new Daredevil
born
is
again.
coming
They're
out.
coming out with
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Daredevil, a lot of these, see, the thing is, a lot of these shows or ideas of stories, right,
Mhm.
also develop a personality. The personality of Daredevil is what makes Daredevil Daredevil. Even the show Punisher shows the personality. The movie, I don't think did enough justice like the series of Punisher, right? In Punisher, we get to see what is his mental conflict, what is his problem, what is his issue, and why does he act the way he acts. You actually see that being personified in a series.
Did y'all see the Frank Miller movie, by the way, that was like the biographical thing about him? Did anybody see that other
I
than
have
me?
not seen that. No.
Okay, so here's the deal. When he was writing Daredevil, because he got handed this like junk comic that wasn't doing any good, and he turned it around, and that's when he makes himself all big and famous. He says to somebody, he's like, you know what I did last night? And he's like, what? And he's like, I was scouring the rooftops of Hell's Kitchen. And the guy's like, that doesn't even surprise. So he was going through the motions of like, what would Daredevil do in a bad neighborhood? Benny, have you ever been to that neighborhood?
There's no bad neighborhoods anymore. It used to be bad neighborhoods. Harlem, everyone said, oh, Harlem is a bad neighborhood. Harlem was never a bad neighborhood. I mean, like people didn't just, because you have so many colleges in Harlem. Like it's not a bad neighborhood.
People
like,
used to
anyone
get
knows,
killed on the subway though, but now they have cameras everywhere. It's not like it was in the 60s or 70s.
no, people got killed in the subways, not because because they provoked other people, right? Like there's a rule. You don't look at people in the subway. You
I mean,
put your head down, you walk in the 90s. That's all it is.
People get killed all over the place. So I mean, that
Right.
happens. But yeah, it's like
It's not right.
yeah. When we went to New York Comic Con, me and my buddies, we had no problem walking down the streets to go find food and walk to Times Square, all that. So we didn't have any trouble doing that. We didn't,
No, New York is
yeah.
New York is fairly safe for 8 million residents. Almost it's fairly safe. You have enough cops in the places. I mean, there was a guy who stabbed 4 or 5 people like this past week, and unfortunately they died. But that was like you don't have this every day. It's not it's not an everyday occurrence where you have a knife wielder like that.
What are you doing, Super Black though?
Well, yeah, well,
he lives in New York City right now.
Right. But still,
yeah. But all cities have that. I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, and man, in the 70s, you wouldn't catch me dead in the streets of Atlanta. Even now, I don't like going downtown Atlanta because it's but
it's rough.
Yeah, and so, but then again, there's other times during that week of Dragon Con when there's 100,000 other nerds like me there.
You're there.
Right. We're walking up and down the streets, no problem.
Yeah, because
we outnumber everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that.
Is that 3 hotels or 5 hotels? How many do they use?
5. There's 5 hotels, 3 convention centers, and we take over the mall food court.
Wow, so that's
it's 6 or 8 city blocks.
It's like
Dragon Con's everything. It's wrestling,
like
it's authors, it's movies, it's comics, it's everything.
And it's split up. So like
when is that?
It is Labor Day weekend. I say Labor Day weekend, but it's like 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
Because stuff starts on Thursday and it ends on Monday.
Wow.
But there are people that get there a week before and are partying up until it and during it.
But we gotta be there too. Yeah. I mean, that's
everything is spread out. So like the actors and celebrities are in this hotel. Gaming is in this hotel. Comics were in one of the convention centers. And so it's well spread out. There's different tracks and panels at all the hotels. But it is a hike because I'm in the America's Mart Building 2 in the comic and pop art track. That's where I have my table. And so there were 2 times this year I had panels in one of the tracks that was at the Cortland Grand, which is 6 blocks away.
Wow.
So I hiked 6 blocks to the panel, hiked 6 blocks back, and halfway is uphill either way because you go up then down, and so it's a hike. But it's Dragon Con is an experience. Everybody should do it once. It is a monster. It is huge. You cannot see everything. There's easily 90 to 100,000 people there. And then on Saturday they double that because they do the parade, and so people can come watch the parade for free. So a good 100,000 people come just to watch the parade. And that's not counting the other events going on around us. There's usually 2 football games because the stadium is a couple of blocks away. We're right there next to Centennial Olympic Park. There's concerts because it's a holiday. There's all kinds of stuff. They
got big people from everywhere too. I saw Brad Street was there. I love him. He's one of my favorite artists and all that. He did all the Punisher Max stuff and all that. It's awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's the convention has 400 guests.
Whoa.
Not to mention a few hundred attending pros, which you're a professional and you're there, but you're not a guest. So yeah, and it's a nice mix of everything. It's really a pop culture thing because they're getting celebrities from multiple genres and multiple mediums. There's going to be actors and TV folks from different genres. There's going to be gamers and fans. There's at least one astronaut there every year. There's writers and artists and painters and people that make toys. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. It's something I think everybody should experience it at least once. Prepare to walk a lot. Prepare to wait in lines because it is huge, especially to get into the dealer's room. Because, like I said, we're in the America's Mart on the 4th floor. The 3 floors underneath where my table is are the dealer halls. That's the dealer halls. There's 3 floors. And on Saturdays and Sundays especially, the line wraps around the building to get in.
Wow. And what does the dealer halls do? What's that different than anyone else?
That's vendors. It's vendors. It's that are selling whatever they're selling. T-shirts, toys, swords, books, movies, you name it. Yeah. And there's 3 floors. There's just 3 floors of it, and it's massive.
Which is the prime floor? The first floor?
No, it's a pretty steady mix of different things on different floors. Like if there's multiple T-shirt vendors, they're on different floors. So it's very but there's a lot, and
that's an experience in itself. Wow.
Oh, it is absolutely. If you're into that sort of stuff and crowds don't bother you, it's worth it, and it's an around the clock venue. Now, like the halls close at 7, like the vendor hall and comic pop art, but there are panels and tracks going on overnight throughout the morning. The gamers lock themselves in the Sheraton or the Hilton on Thursday and don't come out till Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, there's stuff going on. It's around the clock. I've been on panels at midnight and then had to do another one at 9 in the morning.
They're fun.
Wow.
There's the people watching. Yeah, because people, especially a lot of great costumes, but there's a lot of just people walking from hotel to hotel and taking photos and hanging out and meeting people. And because it is so big and all this, like a lot of shows you do, when it's over, the celebrities leave. And that is not the case at Dragon Con. You'll be walking around the lobby at night taking pictures and bump into one of the guests who's there taking pictures because it's just so cool. Yeah, it is an experience. I highly recommend it. Definitely. Buy your tickets early. It's not cheap.
Well, we want to be a vendor there, not just tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Apply. Actually, they just opened applications for next year. So
Yeah, I'm gonna hit it. I'm gonna hit it.
DragonCon.org, I think. Is
The Dragon Con's enormous. It is.
It is an experience.
We might go, Benny.
Well, I might go, Raul. That's for sure. I'm just kidding, Raul.
But it is
Yeah.
it is
Daniel's like down the road from there. He's not that far at
Daniel
all.
lives there. Daniel's gonna for sure
Daniel
come.
Baldwin. He's part of our staff. He
Mhm.
he lives out that way.
Yeah, it is the biggest show I do each year. It's the most profitable show I do every year as a writer. Of course, it also costs more, so, to
No,
stay
I
in
think that
Atlanta
yeah,
for a week.
that show is a heavy show. That's
Yeah.
like that's not so simple. I mean, I think that's close to how's that bigger than Comic-Con? Is that bigger than San Diego Comic-Con or less?
No, San Diego's bigger. But whereas San Diego, I mean, they're different kinds of shows. San Diego gets more people. New York Comic-Con gets more people. But they're more of, and this is not to disparage it, but they're more like trade shows. Everything's
Okay.
in one building. It's open from this hour to this hour. And then when it's done, everybody goes their separate ways. And tomorrow we come back and it's open at these hours. DragonCon starts on Thursday and ends on Monday.
Wow.
It's just stuff going on. So, and it's more spread out. So there's a lot of stuff that's not official happening too, because it's so spread out and it's fan run. Whereas New York and San Diego and others, they're run by a corporation. DragonCon is run by volunteers. The people that work for DragonCon full time is 2.
Whoa.
Everything else is done by volunteers.
Wow.
And
that's more grassroots level.
So people that do it and are working it and are running tracks and doing all that stuff, they do it because they love it. That's the main thing. And so there's a lot of that. Things are done for fun, especially when you get down to the track levels where, sorry, this has turned into a DragonCon commercial. Sorry about that.
No, hey, they'll love it. I mean,
but
yeah.
the tracks, they have tracks for different things. There's the Sci-Fi Classics, American Classics track, which looks at TV shows 10 years and older. I've done panels on Sequest that had 300 people showed up to hear me talk about Sequest.
You're talking about the show Sequest, or
they did a fan panel, and it was me and one other person. We went in and we talked about Sequest as fans to a room with like 300 people in it.
I remember watching Sequest when I was a kid. It was such an awesome show. I don't know why.
And then we're on, I do, there's comic panels, book panels. And so, we're sitting there, me and other authors, and we're talking to, a fairly large room with a few hundred people about writing this or writing that. And it's fun. And it's more like a lot of times when you go to San Diego, Hall H, it's a commercial for that company. Marvel's got an hour. It's a commercial, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what DragonCon does. DragonCon is all fan focused. So
more passion.
Yeah, and so we don't get like the big comic publishers don't come anymore like they used to. Marvel and DC and all those companies used to come and set up, and they don't. We're just not there, But
they have people. But they have people from it, because I mean, I've seen that they have like some big editors and different individuals.
Yeah, but usually they're coming they're not being sent by Marvel. They're coming because they're a guest. Mm-hmm. And so so it's like that. So everything's more of a fan focus. So even when you're doing, and so they bring in a lot of older actors, and so they'll have big, like one year we had David Warner and Malcolm McDowell. So they were doing a Time After Time panel, where they answered questions for an hour. They also get new stuff. Like they usually get some like Strange New Worlds was there a lot this year. People from those casts of new shows. There's always Firefly people there every year. The year that the movie came out, the whole cast was there that weekend. Because the convention was right before the movie opened, and so we got to, it was the first time I think they had done a show where they were all together that wasn't San Diego. And so it's just really cool. So they get a nice mix of current pop culture things, but then they'll bring in old people. I met Mickey Rooney at Dragon Con, you know. Yeah, so it's fun. It's my favorite show of the year. And I don't get paid for any of that. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah,
What's the
and
latest project you have, Mr. Nash? What's the latest project?
That came out, I just wrote, just came out last week. I got to write a Remo Williams story. I don't know if you has ever seen the movie. Remo Williams was it was called The Destroyer. It was a line of books from like the 60s through the 90s or early 2000s.
Eric was talking about those when he was on, and he said that The Punisher is based on The Destroyer.
Yes, that is very true. And I don't have my comp copy yet, so I can't hold it up. But Remo Williams, there was a movie in the 80s with Fred Ward playing Remo, which I love that movie. It's the one where they fight on the Statue of Liberty while it's being repaired. You guys have probably seen those scenes. But anyways, Remo, I've loved the books. I loved the books for years. And I got the opportunity to write a short story for a new anthology for Remo Williams, which was a blast. That's the most recent thing that came out. Oh, actually, that's not the most recent thing. Earlier today, I found out that a comic short story I wrote came out in Tomorrow Girl issue number 9 from Antarctic Press this week.
Wow.
I found out today. So they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way."
Is that a prose story in Antarctic Press, or is that
no,
a comic script?
It's a comic script. I wrote a there's a character called Lady Luck, who's an old public domain comic character, I think. Or she's based on some, I don't know, pastiche or something. And so the artist Larry Guidry, who drew the issue, he and I did this little 5-pager called 5 Pages. And so we did that, and that's in the issue. So it's just 5 pages that I wrote that's in there. So that was fun. But it was fun to work with Larry. You know, I've known Larry for quite a number of years now. And so it was fun to work with him and, you know, get this out. So we did it years ago. So it's good to finally see it out. So
wow.
I was at a shop out here in Tennessee where I was doing a signing, Mountaintop Comics out in Cookeville, and they had an Antarctic Press section, and I thought that was awesome. You know, because I follow all these people on LinkedIn, and I don't see like an Antarctic section a lot, but they had a bunch of them at Mountaintop Comics in Cookeville, Tennessee, for any Antarctic Press people that are listening. A whole bunch of them side by side by side.
Well, this is issue number 9, and it's called Tomorrow Girl, and on the cover, Tomorrow Girl is teaming up with Herbie the Fat Fury, the old character from the comics in the 60s and 70s. And so, yeah. So I'm curious. I haven't read anything but my 5 pages, but yeah, it's fun. I love writing comics, so I write them as often. I've got.
How long does it take for you to write a comic? We know Ben is very fast. How fast are you? Is there a competition?
I can knock out a 22-page issue script. I can knock that out in a day or two. You know.
Wow.
If I'm not doing anything else.
Benny's faster than you, Ben.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on the day and on what you're doing. What I tend to do, because he's saying Benny's faster than you, is I go to work and I work full time, and then I take like 2 hours and I write like how many ever pages, and then I have at it. And for the record, Benny, when I was doing that other thing that we talked about, where you were saying how extraordinary I was, I did 10 pages a day.
Wow.
That's what I did. But when I'm not doing them while I'm at work, you know that I'm thinking about them and processing them in my head, because you do the same type of thing. Sometimes you need that time in between so you know what you're going to write when you sit down.
Oh, yeah, just the physically typing it part. But I juggle. I mean, I'm juggling. Like right now, if I look at my laptop here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 open projects I'm working on. So I bounce between them.
Wow.
So yeah, so it a lot of it depends on what's due, what day, whatever I feel like I'm in the mood for that day. Because everything's with deadlines, and I work for multiple publishers, so there's deadlines for everything. Plus, you're over here working on this, and then edits come in. So you got to stop, go work on edits, get that done, go back to work on this.
How do you meet your deadlines? How do you schedule your time for deadlines?
I keep a file. I have a file, a spreadsheet that's this is the name of the project, who it's for, the size of it, and when it's due. And with comics and audio scripts and screenplays, we count by the pages. So if I've got to write a 22-page comic, I 22 pages. Everything we do, prose, novels, short stories, it's all by the word.
Yep.
So that's how we track things. So then I'll keep track of how many words I need to do.
40,000 words, man. And when you almost get it done, and it's like, I got to see how many, you've got this stress.
Yeah. Because I'm always gonna, like, I'm stressing I'm never gonna reach that word count. And then as I get closer, I sail right past it. And then it's like, okay, now I gotta go cut some stuff. But I keep track of all that. And I know what I can get done in a day, in my average work day. And so I know, okay, these are due, that's this much work. That I need to make sure I do this much a day. If it gets tight, then I do extra, like instead of, like I'll come back at night, like at 1 a.m. Like last night, I couldn't sleep. So I got back up and worked till like 5 this morning and got like 2 days worth of work done in one day.
So, have you ever did a book? Now I've had 2 that I've ever did like this. Have you ever had a book where you didn't care if it was a novella or a novel? It was just going to be whichever it was supposed to be, and then there wasn't the stress of that. Have you ever did that?
No. Usually I know, because I cannot. There's something in my brain. I cannot work on something if I don't know it's for something. Like I can't just sit down and go, I think I'm going to write something today just for the heck of it.
I mean, you're going to write it and it's going to be a novella or a novel, but it doesn't matter which. Never did that.
Because if you're working for a publisher, that's the stuff before you've written word one. Yes, they come in and go, we want a novel, we want a novella, we want a short story. They tell you that up front. It's going to be this big. So that going in. Doing it yourself, like the first novels I wrote, I didn't go in going, it's got to be exactly this. But I knew there was a range. Like novels tended to be 80 to 100,000 words. So that's what I shot for. And I got somewhere closer to the 100 range, but so I didn't have a specific number, just a range. And then when I do the stuff myself, like with the novellas generally tend to be around 30,000 words. But because I'm publishing those, if I do need to go over, I can. Like the one I just finished went over by 3,000 words, but it's cool. We needed it. And so what I do there, because I'm doing those myself, keep the cost the same. I'll make a little less profit on that one per sale, but I don't want to up the price, for one book. Like if they're $9, oh, this one's 12, $9, that's a good way to anger my audience. I don't want to do that. So, but I generally have an idea. There's a range. So.
Not bad. But how long does it take for when you finish a project in writing, for it to come out? Like you said, like you did something for like 2 years for them to come out.
Sometimes, I mean, it depends on if I'm doing it. It's usually pretty quick. Although, like I'm doing edits on Deadly Deals now, which is a full-length novel, like 100,000 words. The second draft is taking me a little while because I'm doing it around other projects. But the moment it's done, it'll be on sale within a day or 2.
Wow.
Do you hate writing forwards or like the the stuff before the book like I do? Do you hate that part?
I don't hate it. I don't. It's not my favorite part. I mean, I don't like the stuff I do myself. I very rarely write forwards, but what I do, and I did this. I started doing this because one of the earliest publishers I worked for used to have us write essays that would go at the end of the book about the story we had written. And I
Really?
kind of like that. So actually,
A
with the stuff,
postscript,
yeah. So with the stuff I do now, so like if I'm doing the new Snow novel, at the end of it, I'll put an essay in there that talks about writing. It's only a couple pages. It's not huge. So I enjoy that. So I don't really do a lot. Usually the front just has all the copyright and all that stuff. And then I usually do a dedication. This is dedicated to this person for this reason. Then we go right into the story. And at the end, there's a bit of, because a lot of times, oh, this was fun. Oh yeah, this part really happened. I stole this from the news. All right.
do you do an epigraph ever?
Do I do what? I'm sorry.
Like where you put a quote before the stuff?
No, I've done it in the past. I don't do it often. I just don't like going and looking at the quotes.
Yeah.
I've done it in the past. It's just not often. Yeah.
I'm
I also don't.
like
I
too
don't. I don't.
gothic or whatever. I do
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah.
I also don't like titling my chapters because I get that question all the time. Is do you come up with a title for each? And it's like, no, chapter 1, chapter 2. I've done it before. Some publishers request it, and if they request it, I'll do it. But it's not, I don't think it's necessary. So a lot of that stuff just depends. Every publisher has their own unique flair and style. So if I'm working for a publisher and they want that, whatever they want to make the book look like one of their books, that's what I'll do. But on the ones I do, I kind of have, this is the way I do it. And so the books that I put out look this way. So, but the books I do for somebody else look different. So, but again, it's that kind of stuff going in. I've never really had a publisher come up to me and say, we need to do it this way, and it's just so weird that I have to go, no. I've not run into that. It could happen, but I've never run into like guidelines that were so strange that
Have you ever written in pastiche, or do you like to, like Shakespeare or whatever?
I've written. I don't write like other writers. I don't try to like mimic the style, but I do in the course of my career, and I still do. I write characters that are public domain characters. Certainly Domino Lady. I didn't create her. I don't own her. I've written her more than anybody else alive, I believe. But I know at the end of the day, I don't own her. I don't, but I just tell the best stories with her that I can, and I write my version of her. But I've written Sherlock Holmes and Zorro and Remo Williams and the Green Hornet, and in all those, when I go in, the thing I go in is like, okay, it needs to sound like, if I'm writing the Green Hornet and we were doing the 60s TV show version, the characters have to sound like those guys. So I make it a point to make sure that the characters are the characters that I'm based on. So when I did Zorro, it had to read like the Zorro, because I was doing the book version.
Yeah.
Because there were different people in the book that got different versions, the TV or the movies. I had the book version. So I had to make him sound like the guy in the book, not like Antonio Banderas.
And I love Domino Lady, and you're the dude that introduced me to her. Ryle and Benny don't know who that is. She talks like an old actress, and it's like very noir and everything, and she takes out the bad guys.
I have the doll. My publisher sent me the doll.
That is awesome.
They made a limited edition doll, and it's like $150 when they were new. And I was like, yeah, I don't have that kind of cash. I'm not going to blow $50 or $150 on a doll. And so one day, it was earlier this year, I get a box in the mail, and I open it up, and it's in there. And my publisher's like, found this in the warehouse. Thought you might like it.
Now, have you written prose about her, like taking out Nazis, or is it just like extortion people and all that?
No,
because I've read about like extortioners and all that.
There is a book it's done. I've written it. It hasn't come out yet. I've seen the covers, and right now there is an illustrator doing full page illustrations to go inside the book. But it's a novel. And it's a team up of several characters. But yes, when we meet Domino Lady, she is chasing down a Nazi saboteur.
That never gets old.
Yeah. Well, Domino Lady takes place, for those who don't know, Domino Lady appeared in the 1936 in Pulp magazine. She appeared in 6 short stories and then disappeared. She was written under the house name, so no one knows who actually wrote those. But they
Wow.
were very, they were, her main thing was dealing with, corrupt businessmen, crooked politicians, that kind of thing. And so, but what made her stand out was she was an adult book because she liked to have sex. Now, if you read them, they're pretty tame by today's standards, but that was her thing. So I always tell people, imagine if the femme fatale from a noir movie turned out to be the hero. That's Domino Lady. She uses everything she's got, but more importantly, she outsmarts her villains. And so she tends to find out what's going on. She writes them letters telling them, I know what you did, and here's what I'm going to do to you because you did it. And they're on guard. They know she's coming. And then she outsmarts them. She uses that against them. And she's not afraid to sleep with people to get things done. And but she's wonderfully detective-like, and she outsmarts them, gets the goods on them. She also robs them blind, which is how she supports her fancy life habits. And then so she does that. But so we've built on those 6 originals, and so she still fights a lot of, crooked businessmen and corrupt politicians and blah blah blah. But we've also had her fight some people with some powers or gimmicks. She's Batman in a slit skirt. It's But yeah, so we've written her long enough now. We're probably up to 1939, and so now we are getting into the era where there is a war going on. And so we've not shied away from that, where she's had to deal with Nazi sympathizers or spies or things like that.
So
So
interesting. You're talking about public domain heroes, right?
mhm.
So I see Wonder Woman is one of the public domain heroes, and also Daredevil. So
No,
how was it that they're
technically no. Well, it's one of those, and Ben and I have had this conversation
Yeah.
about Zorro.
Go ahead.
The original stories are in public domain, which means you can retell or reprint the original stories. The characters are trademarked, which means you can't do new stuff with them because someone still owns the trademark. Just like where Steamboat Willie hit public domain earlier
Mouse.
this year. Was it this year or late last year? Whatever it was. People are like, "Oh, I can write Mickey Mouse," and I'm like, "No, you can do Steamboat Willie. You cannot use the words Mickey or Mouse anywhere. You
Yeah.
can only do
Well,
Steamboat
yeah,
Willie."
well, I mean, in Image Comics, I think that they really pushed it immediately out the gate. I don't know if anything's been said or done. I'm not sure if y'all are aware. He appeared in the Savage Dragon, and
Mhm.
Mickey Mouse was kind of like filthy talking, and a Savage Dragon's wife says he's ruined my entire childhood.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. But yeah, like you said, and I thought, let me be careful, because I did a comic that did, okay, indie thing. Kids like it. It's totally kid friendly. But I did not use the names Mickey or
Right.
Minnie. There's actually 3 different Mickey Mouse comics that fall under the public domain, and they're all that black and white image. They all look the
Mhm.
same. But yeah, I didn't use those names because they don't exist at that point in time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like with Zorro. The original Zorro stories are public domain. You could re-release them. You could adapt them and retell them. But if you do anything new, then Disney's lawyers are going to pounce on you,
right? But
or
you can,
whoever's.
you don't have to call him Zorro.
Well, that's true too. But yeah, I mean, people do
If it's
pastiches a lot.
so similar, though, if
Yeah.
it's too similar, right?
No, I don't
Well,
think it's the
people.
problem. The problem is the name. You can only you can't trademark you can't trademark the image of the
Right.
character, but the name you're trademarking.
He cuts
That's
a
true.
Z into people.
Yeah, because that's what they call a pastiche. And you can do that. People do. There are versions of people doing Sherlock. Like Sherlock Holmes is public domain. Anybody can write Sherlock Holmes, because they never trademarked Sherlock Holmes. But there are people that do pastiches. One of the ones I hear a lot in terms of this needs to be our world Superman. So you're not doing Superman, but you're doing a Superman-like character.
It's
Domino
weird
Lady
because
was
James Gunn and Brightburn, and they almost had
right,
problems, and now he's running DC
right,
completely. But yeah, that was a bad Superman.
right. Yeah, but he couldn't call it Superman. He could do a Superman-like story. So you could do a Zorro-like thing. There's just certain things that you can't do because then it's clear to them. Like if you're doing a character that's Zorro-like and his name is, I don't know, El Fuego, and he's doing all the same stuff, but if he's carving Z's into people,
You're
that
over.
would get you. Yeah. So
So he'll
it's
carve E's.
right. So it's those things you have to watch out for when you're doing a pastiche. I mean,
Right.
most people are going to get it. They're going to know what you're doing, but legally, you're on. So I mean, so like with Domino Lady, I write Domino Lady for Moonstone because Domino Lady is public domain. We can use her. Other people, I think there's 4 different publishers right now doing Domino Lady stuff. So she's out there, and their stuff and my stuff diverge a little. Like because I've written her so many times, parts of it have become my version. Like there was one guy a few years ago decided that he was going to do some Domino Lady fan fiction because he was a fan, and he went and started writing them. Now he wasn't selling them, so it wasn't a big deal. But I had to tell him one day, I'm like, look, you're writing characters. She's public domain, but all these characters that I created for her to interact with are
Or
not.
not.
So if you're not selling this, I don't care. But if you start selling it, then my publisher is going to have something to say. Because yes, she's public domain, but I've created all these characters around her, and other writers have created characters around her. That's like when it becomes especially difficult when you're writing things that have been around a while, like Sherlock Holmes or Dracula.
And Popeye.
Right, because audiences go, okay, so Dracula is public domain, the original novels. You can write that Dracula. But there have been things that have been added to the Dracula mythos in movies and TV shows. Those things are not public domain. So you write Dracula and your audience goes, well, why don't they do this? Why are you skipping that? And it's because I don't have rights to that.
Did you watch Last Voyage of the Demeter, by the way, the movie?
I have not seen that one yet.
That is my favorite
really
Dracula movie of all time. I was amazed at how good it was. Of course, it's just a portion of the book where they're taking the ship from over where he's at to England. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. I didn't know if you'd seen that or not. I like how they took a piece of that and used it.
Yeah, I have heard some amazing things about it from friends who have seen it. It's on my list. Oh,
it's great.
I hear it's really good. But yeah, so you have to be kind of careful with those, when you do, like Sherlock Holmes. There's the Conan Doyle stuff is all public domain, but anything not written by Doyle, if characters appear in those, you have no rights to them. So those are things, but audiences at large don't know that, so they're just like, oh, so you wrote Sherlock Holmes, but it doesn't have this character in it. You're an idiot who doesn't know Sherlock Holmes. Because, but you're not allowed to use that because like Enola Holmes is a great example. Enola Holmes is not public domain, but as the sister of Sherlock Holmes. So if I write a Sherlock Holmes story, I can't use Enola Holmes. I could create a new sister for him if I wanted to.
You can use like Moriarty or though, because those are
because Moriarty's in the books, public domain. His brother Mycroft, Watson. Those are all characters that are absolutely free to use. And if you want a good example of how it is, look at newer versions of Sherlock Holmes stuff. If they're using it, it's probably the public domain stuff. Lestrade and that kind of stuff.
So ultimately, you can create your own universe with the character, but not obviously buy into someone else's universe. Like if you like that person that you had that you mentioned to, he should have created his own characters. He just copped out and took the easy route by taking your characters.
Yeah, and a lot of times and like I say, it becomes complicated because trademarks exist, even though, like I said, those public, the early Wonder Womans and Supermans and Popeye. I think Popeye does this year, Superman's next year, or something like that, or or Zorro, or the early stuff is all public domain. But because the companies still own those characters, that you can't do anything new without licensing it. So when I write media tie-ins for a publisher, that publisher has paid a licensing fee to the people that own said character. And then they have then permission to do stuff with it. But then, like if you write for a publisher, you write, the publisher and the editor approve it, you're good to go. When you do a media tie-in thing, you write, the publisher and editor approve it, then it goes to the people that own the character. And in that point, it could be kicked for any number of reasons. And not all of them are creative, because a lot of times it's not a creative person at this corporation that's making the decision. They can kick for any number of reasons. There are currently 3 or 4 different Zorro properties, either out or in development. Your story can be a great story, and they go, "Oh, the Disney show is going to do that plot already. You can't do it."
Hey, don't I know it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I wrote Zorro Kills, so I can't sell it right now. It got pulled, and Bobby's the one that told me. And people were saying, "Man, this is great," and Bobby's like, "Man, that is good, but I'm surprised that they would let you do that." I'm like, "What do you mean?"
I remember, because I'm like, I can't believe ZPI let you get away with that. And he goes,
Yeah.
ZPI, and I'm like, uh-oh.
He tracks down child trafficking pedophiles and hacks them up, slashes them up, kills them, maims them. It's great, but at the same time, Bobby's like, like heavy PG-13 to R-rated Zorro due to heavy violence. It's like I'm amazed.
Yeah, because the people that own the characters, their job, like we're at our level, we're concerned about what's the best story we can tell. Their job is, we need to protect this character. That's why there's a lot of stuff. Like I hear at conventions all the time. This one I get all the time. Someone will come up to me who is not a published writer but wants to be. And they'll come up to me, and it's almost, this is the one I get all the time. "Man, Spider-Man comics suck. I hate them. If I ever got the opportunity to write Spider-Man, I would." And they start listing off like 10 things that I know Marvel and Disney will never in a million years let them do.
Did you hear recently that allegedly now, because it's all over YouTube, but that doesn't make it true, that the head honcho over the Spider-Man stuff, that he will not let Peter Parker marry Mary Jane, and they're like, "Why?" Did you see? But nonetheless, it's their property, right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right, like in the comics, I mean, yeah, because when they undid the marriage, that was not a writer and an artist or coming, "Hey, we want to do a story where the marriage gets undone." No, that came from on high. Someone in corporate said, "Spider-Man married does not track as well as Spider-Man dating. We want Spider-Man to be able to get out and date." And so they go because this is a pretty contrived story of how they magically undo the marriage, which also brings back dead characters that they wish they hadn't have killed off, and all these other things.
The child that they would have had in that nightmare situation, that this kid that he keeps seeing is like, "I'm the kid that you would have had with Mary Jane if you didn't ruin your marriage to save your elderly Aunt May, who is like another year."
Yeah. So a lot of those decisions are business decisions. Spider-Man makes billions. That's with a B every year. Spider-Man makes billions of dollars for Marvel and Disney every year. They are not going to take the chance of screwing that up. So their job is to protect Spider-Man. Yes, there are great Spider-Man ideas and plots out there that will never see the light of day, because they would fundamentally change or ruin the character.
Or if they did, it would be a what if. They would just sell it up because they do that. Multiverse, what if?
And so, and media tie-in stuff's the same way. I've been doing it long enough now that I can go, okay, I got to pitch a Zorro. We'll just stay with Zorro. I got to pitch a Zorro story. In my head, I already know, okay, these stories they will never do because publishers, licensed properties get this one a lot too. Because we did one where Sean Taylor and I created a PI character called Rick Ruby. It was the Ruby Files was the book, and we opened it up to other writers, to the publisher did, to pitch ideas. And we got this, and in talking with other editors, they get this every time there's an open call for characters that are pre-existing characters. And this is the pitch they're going to get. And I'll just use Zorro just to keep it simple because we've already talked about Zorro. Zorro meets character X and falls in love. They get married. They have a child. A villain from Zorro's past comes back and murders the wife and child. Zorro has to go get revenge. That story gets pitched no matter what property it is. I guarantee you, if someone's writing Spider-Man, they've got that pitch. If someone's writing Star Trek, they've got that pitch. Kirk falls in love, has a kid, they've written it. The reason that pitch is never going to get approved is because that suddenly adds, to use Doctor Who parlance, a fixed moment in time. Everything about that character then suddenly is either after the murder or before the murder, before the child or after the child. Your life changes. That's a life-changing moment. If they're going to do something like that, they're not going to just take it as a pitch from somebody. That means somebody at the corporate level has come up, we need to do this. They then hire the writer they think is the best one to do that and come to them and go, we would like you to we need a story where this happens. It's not going to happen in an anthology where they're just doing open pitches. Don't pitch that, So I've done it long enough. I know what I can pitch, and I know what I can't, and so I don't go in and try to pitch. I'm not changing the world.
Did you believe Superman was dead when they killed him with Doomsday?
Yeah,
because at that point in time, I was naive enough to believe that he was. It's like, well, they've killed Superman because it was a huge thing. I got the watch, the pen.
Mm-hmm.
You remember all that at J.C. Penney? That's what comics were at J.C. Penney, Benny.
And people who didn't read comics were snapping those up, thinking, "My God, I'm going to put my kids through college." And no, you're not. And he'll be back in 6 months. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
But the comics are worth money today, no?
Not really. They printed so many of them.
That has to do with the numbers.
Yeah, they printed so many that they're worth it because they printed. If they'd have just printed the black bagged ones and stopped, yes. But then they did a second print in a white bag. Then they did a third print with a lenticular cover, and then
the Walking Dead, like their first comic, because I saw this on what's that place in Vegas where they take things and they go into the shop.
Pawn Stars.
Yeah, Pawn Stars, and so they brought in. It's a certain color of cover, very specific, that they only did a few of, and that's what makes something worth a lot. The rarity of it.
Yeah.
So when there's a war, and it's like we got to get rid of all this paper because of the war, and yada yada yada. So there's like 1 or 2 or 10 or whatever the comic. They shoot up in price like crazy. But if you get like a gajillion, it's
Yeah. And because they made so many and people were buying 10 and 20 at a time, you go into all these people's houses and they've got 10 and 20 copies. So if you take one into a store and try to sell it, you might get 50 cents for it. It's not become that collectible.
Do you hear the talk about like comic shops now and like creators? So what they'll do is they'll have like the cover for. So let's say Benny was going out through Diamond, and what they'll do is like Ryle will do a cover for a comic, and that'll be the A cover. But then for the B variant cover, you have to order 10 of Ryle's covers of it, and then you get this incentive cover. That's a little bit fancier or something like that. So then there's less of those, and they'll have a C and a D.
Or they've got a bigger name to do this limited. There's also stores can have covers made just for their store.
Scotty Young does that. He's got an absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman that's his thing, and you can only get them on his website.
Right. Right. I have a friend that does that. He has a store that every time there's one of those covers available, the store hires my friend to draw a cover that you can only get in that store. And I think you have to. I think they're like it's 500. I think is the limit, the number of those. But those become a little bit limited because, if you're not in that store or they're not selling them online, you're not going to get them. But they do a lot of that because there are collectors who want to be completists, to get all that stuff. Some people are happy to just buy the comic, read the comic, and they're good. But some people want everything. Some people like having the choice, of what cover they get. So and those are all business decisions. They're not necessarily born out of creativity. They're born out of business, and it works. And and people seem to like them. So I mean, it's great. It's offering the audience something that they want.
All right, Mr. Nash, we're out of time. Any last questions, Rael?
We need to have him back on. Is what we need to do.
Yeah, we'll
yes,
definitely have him.
Bobby is so fluid.
Listen, he was very informative,
I was like,
by the way.
We need to have him on. Go ahead.
Yeah, we learned a lot.
Yes, very informative. It's very strong. We learned a lot, like Rael just said. Honestly, I was listening to every word you said. I was captivated by the Dragon Con, right? And then obviously how the public domain works. Like, there's a lot of education here for people.
Dragon Con owes this podcast money as well.
Well, I will send
Bobby
Dragon
Nash
Con
is going to get a table like
this link. Maybe you can give us like kind of help us out, get us a better deal on a vendor.
DragonCon.org.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, it's all in there. So Mr. Nash and Eric, who dropped out at 7, we appreciate their time. And everybody who wants to learn more about comics, come to our iShook YouTube page and our Twitter page, which is more specifically not Twitter page, our Twitch page, which is specifically dedicated for comics. So everybody, just be real, be cool, and don't forget to support Bobby Nash and his projects, and also Super Black and our fundraising in what's it called? I'm not going to cover Bobby's face, but the Super Black in the corner over there, as you see over here, the corner, the Indiegogo support. $5, $3, $5, $10. It's all good, man. We're just trying to build more teams.
It's good stuff, and it's paid for. It's zero risk. That's just helping us down the road ahead. So it's not one of these things where you give and you're going to wait a year. You're not going to get it. You're going to get it. It's almost printed. I mean, it's good stuff.
I think it'll be ready next week. Print on demand by KDP with our graphic novel. So that
it's like securing your pre-order.
Exactly.
You'll be one of the first to get it.
Bobby's at BobbyNash.com.
It is, yes, BobbyNash.com. That's where you can find me. I'm all over social media and stuff too. So yeah, come say hello.
Awesome. Much love. We respect. And next time we're going to get Bobby's information and everything. We're going to blow it up, but we will put it on the YouTube channel and on the Twitch channel in the description. We appreciate everybody here at iShook. And Bobby's a new member of iShook's team and family.
Thank you.
And God bless Bobby. Anything you need, I got you covered through Ben, whatever you need, brother.
We need Super Black to meet Domino Lady, and we need Bobby to write it.
There you go.
Yeah, we can do that. We
can make that happen.
Definitely. Yeah. I like that.
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. Again, I'm sorry I had to be a little late, but thank you so much.
Awesome to you and Eric. And also, Eric, we're going to drop down his links as well. Everybody, be safe, be prosperous. And like I say, live